The champagne glass trembled slightly in Elise Morgan's hand as she watched him from across the room. For someone who commanded a boardroom of executives without breaking a sweat, why did the prospect of this conversation make her heart race like a nervous intern? At 52, she had built an empire, but tonight, standing alone at the edge of the charity gala in her designer dress, she felt strangely vulnerable. What happened next would change everything, not just for Elise, but for the quiet single father who had no idea his words would soon reshape both their lives forever. If you've ever felt that time was working against you, or that society had already written your story before you were ready for it to end, this journey will resonate deep within your soul. Like and subscribe to join our community of storytellers who believe that life's most profound wisdom often comes from unexpected places. Elise Morgan hadn't planned on attending the spring charity gala that evening. As CEO of Morgan Innovations, the tech company she'd built from scratch over 25 years, she typically avoided these events. Not because she disliked socializing, she was exceptionally good at it when necessary, but because lately, each gathering seemed to remind her of what she didn't have rather than what she'd achieved. The grand ballroom of the Westfield Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers reflecting off designer gowns and bespoke suits. At 52, Elise still turned heads. Her silver-streaked dark hair was styled in an elegant bob that framed her face, accentuating cheekbones that had only grown more defined with age. The midnight blue gown she wore had been selected by her assistant, who insisted it complemented her eyes. Elise. I wasn't sure you'd make it, called Diane Winters, the event organizer and one of Elise's oldest friends. They embraced briefly, the familiar scent of Diane's perfume bringing back memories of college dorms and shared dreams. The board will be thrilled you're supporting the Children's Foundation. Elise smiled. I wouldn't miss it. Besides, you're impossible to say no to. Still the silver-tongued CEO, Diane laughed. Come, there's someone I want you to meet. Before Elise could protest, Diane was guiding her through the crowd toward a small gathering near the windows overlooking the city skyline. As they approached, the group parted slightly, revealing a man Elise hadn't seen before. He stood slightly apart from the others, his attention focused on his phone where he appeared to be checking a text message. Daniel, Diane called. I'd like you to meet Elise Morgan. Elise, this is Daniel Reeves. He's our newest foundation board member and has done wonders with our community outreach program. The man looked up, tucking his phone away with an apologetic smile. He was tall, with warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners. His suit was well-tailored but not ostentatious, quality without flash. Elise guessed him to be in his early 40s. Ms. Morgan, he extended his hand. It's an honor. Your work in sustainable tech development has been groundbreaking. His handshake was firm, his gaze direct. Elise was accustomed to men who either tried too hard to impress her or seemed intimidated by her success. Daniel seemed genuinely comfortable in his skin. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. And please, call me Elise. She tilted her head slightly. You'll have to forgive me, but I don't recall seeing your name in the foundation materials before this year. Daniel smiled. That's because I'm new to this world. I've spent most of my career teaching science at Westridge High School. The foundation recruited me after a community science program I started gained some attention. Daniel is being modest, Diane interjected. His program has helped dozens of at-risk teens find paths to college and careers in STEM fields. He's transformed lives with limited resources. A slight flush colored Daniel's cheeks at the praise. I just connect kids with opportunities. They do the hard work. Sorry, Daniel's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it quickly. I need to take this. My daughter's babysitter. He stepped away, speaking quietly into the phone. Single dad, Diane whispered to Elise. His wife passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. He's raising their daughter alone, she's 12 now. Brilliant girl, just like her father. Elise watched Daniel's expression soften as he spoke on the phone. There was a tenderness there that caught her attention. In her world of quarterly projections and shareholder meetings, such unguarded emotion was rare. Everything okay? Elise asked when he returned. Yes, thanks. Just checking in. This is my first night out in. He paused, calculating, probably 6 months. Sophie, my daughter, wanted to make sure I was not being boring at the party. His smile was both amused and slightly embarrassed. And are you? Being boring? Elise found herself asking. Tremendously, he confessed with a laugh. I've been hiding by these windows for 20 minutes trying to remember how to make small talk. His honesty was refreshing. I was about to do the same, but by the bar, Elise admitted. Daniel checked his watch. Well, it's been exactly 45 minutes since I arrived, which satisfies my promise to Diane to make an appearance. I was planning an early escape. There's a great little cafe around the corner that makes a decent cup of coffee, if you'd like to be tremendously boring elsewhere. The invitation surprised her. More surprising was her immediate desire to accept. When was the last time she'd stepped away from an event like this for something as simple as coffee with a stranger? I'd like that, she found herself saying. 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of Riverside Cafe, the formal atmosphere of the gala replaced by the coffeehouse's warm lighting and the gentle background noise of quiet conversations and soft jazz. So, a high school science teacher on a foundation board, Elise said, warming her hands around her cappuccino. That's an unusual trajectory. Daniel stirred his black coffee thoughtfully. Life rarely follows the expected path, does it? His eyes met hers. After Caroline, my wife, died, I needed to reimagine everything. Our daughter was struggling. I was struggling. The foundation approached me after an article about our school program ran in the local paper. They needed someone with on-the-ground experience in education. I needed something positive to focus on besides grief. I'm sorry about your wife, Elise said quietly. Thank you. His expression was solemn but not broken. It's been a journey. Sophie and I are finding our way. He shifted, clearly ready to change the subject. But what about you? Diane mentioned you started your company from your garage? Not quite a garage, it was a small office above a laundromat. Elise smiled at the memory. The constant humming of dryers became the soundtrack to our first year. We couldn't afford proper office space, so we made do. Those were exciting days. Terrifying, but exciting. And now you run a company valued at what, several billion? That's quite a leap from a laundromat. The numbers in the bank account changed, but the challenges just evolved. Different problems, same sleepless nights. She paused, surprising herself with her candor. Sometimes I miss those early days. Everything felt possible. And it doesn't anymore? Daniel asked, his question gentle but direct. Elise considered deflecting but found herself unwilling to retreat into corporate platitudes. In business? Yes. Personally? She shrugged. Society has very specific ideas about what a woman my age should be doing, and it's not usually running a tech company solo. Ah, Daniel nodded. The "shouldn't you be retired and enjoying your grandchildren" comments? Among others. Isn't it time to slow down, is a favorite from my board members. As if my age has anything to do with my capabilities. She sipped her coffee. The tech world worships youth. I have executives half my age who look at me like I'm a dinosaur when I enter a room. That must be frustrating. It's reality. I've learned to work with it. She set her cup down. What about you? Teaching isn't exactly known for its progressive attitude toward men taking family leave or adjusting schedules for single parenthood. Daniel's laugh was wry. True enough. The school administration was supportive in theory, but practically? I've had to fight for every accommodation. There's still this underlying assumption that a man should just figure it out, or find a new wife to handle the childcare. He shook his head. As if Sophie hadn't lost enough already. The conversation flowed easily, moving from work challenges to favorite books, from travel disasters to the best pizza in the city. Elise couldn't remember the last time she'd spoken so freely with someone she'd just met. There was something about Daniel that invited honesty, perhaps because he offered it so readily himself. As the cafe began to close, they reluctantly gathered their things and stepped out into the cool spring night. The city had quieted, the busy streets now almost empty. I live just a few blocks this way, Elise gestured vaguely uptown. I'm heading to the subway, Daniel said, pointing in the opposite direction. It was really nice talking with you, Elise. Likewise. She hesitated, suddenly reluctant to end the evening. Would you like to continue this conversation sometime? Perhaps dinner? The moment the words left her mouth, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her mind. What was she doing? She never initiated social engagements. And with a man nearly a decade younger? The voice of doubt that had been her constant companion these past few years whispered in her ear. Daniel's expression was unreadable for a moment, and Elise felt a flash of embarrassment. Then he smiled, warm and genuine. I'd like that very much, he said. Though I should warn you, my dinner conversations often include interruptions from a 12-year-old who believes her day's events are of vital importance to everyone at the table. Elise felt a surprising warmth spread through her chest. I'd be disappointed if they didn't. They exchanged numbers, and after a slightly awkward goodbye, neither quite sure whether to shake hands, hug, or simply wave, they parted ways. Walking home, Elise felt lighter than she had in months. The interaction had been refreshing, devoid of the usual power dynamics and professional agendas that colored most of her conversations. Still, as she entered her penthouse apartment, the doubts began to creep back in. What was she thinking, pursuing a friendship, or whatever this might become, with a single father so much younger than herself? Wouldn't she be just another complication in his already complicated life? She moved through her evening routine on autopilot, the questions multiplying. By the time she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she had nearly convinced herself to text him tomorrow with some excuse about being too busy for dinner after all. Meanwhile, across the city in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, Daniel tucked a blanket around his sleeping daughter, who had waited up as long as she could to hear about the fancy party before succumbing to sleep on the couch. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, seeing echoes of Caroline in the curve of her cheek and the spread of freckles across her nose. Settling into his own bed later, he found himself thinking about Elise, her intelligence, her quiet confidence, the way she seemed both powerful and vulnerable at the same time. He wondered if she would really call about dinner, or if tonight had been a momentary connection that would fade in the light of day and regular routines. The following week passed in a blur for Elise. A crisis with a major product launch consumed her days and nights, leaving little time for reflection on her impromptu coffee with Daniel. By Friday, when the situation had finally stabilized, she realized she hadn't contacted him as promised. The thought brought an unexpected pang of regret. Sitting in her office late that evening, the city lights twinkling beyond her wall of windows, she picked up her phone and then set it down again. What would she even say after nearly a week of silence? The moment had likely passed. He'd probably assumed she was just being polite with the dinner suggestion. Her executive assistant, Maya, knocked lightly on the open door. "I'm heading out unless you need anything else." Elise waved her in. "No, I'm fine. Just wrapping up." She hesitated, then asked, "Maya, can I get your opinion on something personal?" Maya, who had worked with Elise for nearly 8 years, raised an eyebrow in surprise. Elise rarely discussed personal matters. "Of course. Is it inappropriate for a woman my age to pursue a friendship with a younger man? Particularly one with a child?" The question sounded ridiculous once spoken aloud, and Elise immediately regretted asking. But Maya didn't laugh or dismiss the question. She considered it thoughtfully. "I don't think age should be the determining factor in any relationship, professional or personal. The question is whether both people bring something positive to each other's lives." She tilted her head curiously. "May I ask what prompted this?" Elise briefly explained meeting Daniel at the gala and their coffee conversation. "I suggested dinner and then completely failed to follow up because of the North Star crisis. Now I'm overthinking it to death." Maya smiled. "Send him a text. Apologize for the radio silence, explain about the work emergency, and see if he's still interested. The worst he can say is no." After Maya left, Elise stared at her phone for several long minutes before finally typing a message. "Daniel, I owe you an apology for not following up sooner. A work situation exploded the day after the gala and I'm only now coming up for air. If you're still open to dinner, I'd very much like to take a rain check. Elise." She hit send before she could change her mind, then tried to distract herself with final emails. To her surprise, a response came less than 5 minutes later. "Elise, no apology necessary. I figured you were busy saving the corporate world from impending doom. As it happens, Sophie and I were just discussing dinner plans for tomorrow night. We're making homemade pizza if you'd like to join. Nothing fancy, but guaranteed to be entertaining. Daniel." The invitation to his home, to meet his daughter so soon, caught her off guard. It was far more personal than the restaurant dinner she had envisioned. Her hesitation must have shown in her delayed response, because another text followed. "Too much too soon. We could meet at a restaurant instead. Sophie would understand." Elise smiled at his perceptiveness. She typed back. "Homemade pizza sounds perfect, actually. Should I bring anything? And please tell me the secret to making good dough, mine always turns out like cardboard." His response was immediate, "Just bring yourself. And I'll teach you our dough secrets, it's all in the kneading technique. Sophie will be thrilled to have another student." The following evening, Elise found herself standing outside a brownstone in a quiet Brooklyn neighborhood, a bottle of sparkling cider in one hand and a small potted herb plant in the other. She had agonized over what to bring. Wine seemed inappropriate for an evening with a child present, but arriving empty-handed felt wrong. The basil plant had been a last-minute inspiration, practical for pizza and hopefully not too presumptuous. Before she could ring the bell, the door swung open, revealing a girl with a cloud of dark curly hair and her father's warm brown eyes. She wore jeans and a t-shirt with a periodic table design, and regarded Elise with open curiosity. "You must be Ms. Morgan," she said with surprising poise. "I'm Sophie Reeves. Dad said you're a CEO who started a company by yourself and now you make computers that don't wreck the planet." "Sophie," Daniel appeared behind his daughter, an apron dusted with flour tied around his waist. "Maybe let our guest actually enter the house before the interrogation?" His eyes met Elise's with a mix of amusement and slight apology. "It's a valid question, Dad," Sophie protested, but stepped back to allow Elise entry. "CEOs are responsible for corporate social responsibility policies. I'm just establishing baseline ethics." Elise couldn't help but laugh as she stepped inside. "It's a perfectly reasonable question, Sophie. And yes, environmental sustainability is a core value at Morgan Innovations. But please, call me Elise." The apartment was warm and inviting, hardwood floors, walls lined with bookshelves, and framed photos everywhere. It was lived in and comfortable in a way Elise's perfectly decorated penthouse never quite managed to be. "I brought this," she handed the sparkling cider to Daniel and the plant to Sophie. "I thought basil might be useful for pizza makers." Sophie's face lit up. "Perfect. Our last basil plant died because Dad forgot to water it." "I was framed," Daniel protested, guiding them toward the kitchen. The plant was clearly suicidal. The kitchen was a scene of controlled chaos, flour dusting most surfaces, tomatoes and various toppings arranged in bowls, and 3 balls of dough resting under towels. "We're doing a pizza competition," Sophie explained, placing the basil plant carefully on the windowsill. "Dad and I each make our signature pizzas, and now you can make one too. The winner gets to pick the movie for tonight." "I should warn you," Daniel added, "judging is completely rigged. Sophie's Pizza has won mysteriously for the last 6 competitions." "That's because Hawaiian pizza is an abomination against nature, Dad," Sophie retorted. "Pineapple doesn't belong on pizza, and the universe knows it." Their easy banter made Elise feel both welcome and slightly out of place. It had been so long since she'd been part of a family dynamic like this. Her own family was scattered across the country, their interactions limited to obligatory holiday calls and occasional visits. "So what's your pizza specialty?" Daniel asked, handing her an apron. "I'm afraid I don't have one," Elise admitted, tying the apron around her waist. "As I mentioned, my dough always fails spectacularly. I'm much better at ordering pizza than making it." "Then tonight is your chance to redeem yourself," Sophie declared. "Dad, show her the secret kneading technique." What followed was one of the most enjoyable evenings Elise had experienced in years. Daniel patiently demonstrated how to stretch the dough without tearing it, while Sophie provided running commentary on his technique. "Dad, you're confusing her, it's like this." They laughed when Elise's first attempt resulted in a hole the size of Texas, then cheered when her second try produced a respectable circle. The conversation flowed naturally, moving from pizza preferences to Sophie's current science project, to a heated but good-natured debate about whether artificial intelligence would eventually replace human creativity. Elise found herself impressed by Sophie's thoughtful questions and Daniel's way of engaging with his daughter as a thinking person rather than just a child. After the pizzas were assembled, Sophie's vegetable masterpiece, Daniel's controversial Hawaiian, and Elise's improvised Mediterranean creation, and put in the oven, Sophie disappeared to set the table, leaving Elise and Daniel briefly alone in the kitchen. "Thank you for including me in your tradition," Elise said quietly. "This is not how I typically spend my Saturday nights." Daniel wiped his hands on a towel, his expression curious. "How do you typically spend them?" "Working, usually. Or at some function where I'm expected to network and represent the company." She smiled ruefully. "Occasionally I manage to read a book or watch a film, but those are rare luxuries." "That sounds exhausting," he observed, no judgment in his tone, just understanding. "It can be," she admitted. "But it's the life I chose. Built, really." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been lingering since their first meeting. "Daniel,
can I ask you something directly? Of course. Does my age concern you? The words came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. I mean, I'm clearly older than you, and I just wonder if that's strange for you. Daniel leaned against the counter, considering her question seriously. Honestly? Your age is probably the least interesting thing about you to me. A small smile played at his lips. I'm much more intrigued by your mind, your experiences, the way you've built something meaningful from nothing. He shrugged. Besides, I'm 43, hardly a teenager. We're both adults with our own histories. Dad. The timer. Sophie called from the dining room. Duty calls, he said with a grin. But to answer your question more directly, no, Elise. Your age isn't a problem for me. Is mine for you? Before she could respond, he moved to check the pizzas, leaving Elise with a strange sense of relief mingled with something she couldn't quite name. Dinner was a lively affair, with Sophie serving as the self-appointed judge of the pizza competition. After much deliberation and several dramatic tastings, she declared Elise's Mediterranean creation the surprise winner, much to Daniel's feigned outrage. Betrayed by my own flesh and blood, he lamented. The feta cheese was the game changer, Dad, Sophie explained seriously. You need to up your cheese strategy. As promised, Elise's win meant she got to choose the movie. Conscious of Sophie's age, she selected a classic sci-fi film that had inspired her own interest in technology as a teenager. Sitting on the comfortable couch, with Sophie sprawled on floor cushions and Daniel beside her, Elise felt a peculiar sense of contentment wash over her. The evening had none of the pressure or performance aspects that characterized most of her social interactions. Here, she was just Elise, not CEO Morgan, not the company figurehead, not the woman fighting to prove her relevance in a youth-obsessed industry. When Sophie fell asleep halfway through the movie, Daniel gently carried her to bed, returning with a quiet apology. No need to apologize, Elise assured him. It's getting late. I should probably head home soon anyway. I'll walk you out, he offered. At her door, he hesitated. I hope tonight wasn't too chaotic for you. Sophie can be a bit intense sometimes. She's wonderful, Elise said sincerely. Smart, curious, unafraid to speak her mind. You're doing an amazing job with her. I'm trying, he said simply. Some days are better than others. A comfortable silence fell between them, neither rushing to end the evening. I'd like to see you again, Daniel finally said. Just the two of us, perhaps? There's a new exhibit at the Natural History Museum that Sophie has already seen with her class, so I wouldn't be neglecting my fatherly duties. Elise smiled. I'd like that very much. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Daniel and Elise would meet for coffee, museum visits, or quiet dinners when Sophie was at friends' houses or extracurricular activities. Occasionally, Elise would join their weekend outings or family meals. To her surprise, she found herself looking forward to both, the private conversations with Daniel and the lively family dynamics when Sophie was present. What began as friendship gradually evolved into something deeper. Daniel was unlike anyone Elise had dated before, thoughtful rather than flashy, content with his modest career rather than aggressively ambitious, and completely unintimidated by her success. He listened when she talked about work challenges, offered perspective without trying to solve her problems, and made her laugh with his dry observations about the absurdities of both their worlds. For his part, Daniel seemed to appreciate Elise's straightforward nature, her intelligence, and her genuine interest in Sophie's life. He confessed that most women he'd met since Caroline's death either couldn't handle the reality of dating a single father or tried too hard to immediately become a mother figure to Sophie. You just treat her like a person, he said one evening as they walked through the park after dinner. You don't talk down to her or try to force a connection. She respects that. She makes it easy, Elise replied. She's a remarkable girl. As summer approached, Elise found herself sharing more of her life with Daniel. She introduced him to friends, brought him as her +1 to smaller work functions, and even mentioned him in passing to her mother during their monthly phone call, something that had caused her mother to nearly drop the phone in shock. But beneath the growing closeness, a current of anxiety still ran through Elise's thoughts. She was falling in love with Daniel, a realization that both exhilarated and terrified her. At 52, she had long ago adjusted to the idea of building her life alone. Her previous relationships had always taken a back seat to her career, eventually withering from neglect. Now, faced with something that felt real and important, the old doubts surfaced with new force. One evening in early June, Elise hosted Daniel at her penthouse apartment for the first time. Sophie was at an overnight science camp, giving them a rare full evening alone. Elise had agonized over the menu before settling on a simple dinner she could prepare herself rather than the catered meals she usually arranged when entertaining. As they sat on her terrace after dinner, the city lights spreading out below them, Daniel reached for her hand. "You've been quiet tonight," he observed. "Everything okay?" Elise hesitated. She had never been good at vulnerability, preferring action over emotional disclosure. But these past months with Daniel had taught her the value of honesty. "I've been thinking about us," she began carefully. "About where this is going." Daniel turned toward her, giving her his full attention. "And what have you concluded?" "That's just it, I haven't. I find myself caught between what I feel and what makes logical sense." She met his gaze. "Daniel, I'm 52. You're 43. In 10 years, I'll be in my 60s while you'll still be in your prime. In 20 years. She shook her head. "The math doesn't improve." "Is this really about math?" he asked gently. "Or is it about something else?" "It's about reality," she insisted. "You have a young daughter. You might want more children someday. You deserve someone who can build a full life with you, not someone already on the downslope of her career and, well, everything else." Daniel was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "May I share a perspective?" When she nodded, he continued. "After Caroline died, I thought a lot about time. About how we think we have so much of it, until suddenly we don't." He looked out at the city. She was 38 when she was diagnosed, 39 when she died. All our plans for someday disappeared overnight. He turned back to Elise. "The lesson I took from that loss wasn't to find someone as young as possible to maximize my time. It was to recognize that tomorrow isn't guaranteed for any of us, regardless of age." His voice softened. "When I look at you, I don't see a number. I see the woman who makes me laugh, who challenges my thinking, who treats my daughter with respect, who has built something remarkable through sheer determination and brilliance." Elise felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "But the practical realities are just that, practical," he finished. "And we can address them practically, if and when we need to. But making decisions based on fear of what might happen decades from now means missing what could happen today, tomorrow, next year." He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Is my age a problem for you, Elise? Does it bother you that I haven't accomplished what you have, that I'm at a different stage in my career, that I come with a preteen who will soon be a teenager with all that entails?" "No," she whispered. "None of that matters to me." "Then why should your age matter to me?" he asked simply. "We're not our numbers. We're just two people who, against all odds and expectations, found something worth exploring together." His words cut through the tangle of doubt that had been tightening around her heart. What he described was exactly what she wanted, to be seen for who she was, not for her age or accomplishments or limitations. To be valued for the present reality, not judged against some hypothetical future. "You make it sound so simple," she said. "It isn't simple," he acknowledged. "Nothing worthwhile ever is. But I think it's worth figuring out, day by day." He squeezed her hand. "Besides, Sophie would never forgive me if I let the only person who's ever defeated me in pizza competition slip away." Elise laughed softly, feeling the tension begin to dissolve. Well, we can't disappoint Sophie. No, he agreed with a smile. We really can't. That night marked a turning point. As spring gave way to summer and then fall, Elise and Daniel's relationship deepened. They navigated the complexities of their different lives, her demanding career, his teaching schedule, Sophie's activities, with patience and creativity. There were challenges, of course. Daniel sometimes felt out of place at Elise's high-profile events, while Elise occasionally struggled with the chaotic energy of family life after years of carefully controlled solitude. But the rewards far outweighed the adjustments. Elise found unexpected joy in helping Sophie with science projects, in Sunday morning pancake competitions, in the simple pleasure of belonging to something larger than herself. Daniel thrived with a partner who understood ambition and purpose, who supported his career while valuing his primary role as a father. Sophie, after initial wariness, had embraced Elise's presence in their lives with surprising enthusiasm. "You don't try to be my mom," she explained frankly when Elise asked about her acceptance. "You're just you, and that's good. Plus, Dad smiles a lot more now." 1 year after their first meeting at the charity gala, Elise found herself back in the same ballroom, this time with Daniel beside her and Sophie at home with her favorite sitter. The foundation was honoring Daniel's expanded science program, which had now spread to 3 additional schools with funding secured by the board, including a significant anonymous donation from Elise. As they circulated through the crowd, Elise noticed the curious glances, the whispered comments. Despite her successful integration into Daniel's life, the outside world still saw them through the lens of convention, the powerful older woman, the younger teacher, the unexpected pairing. "Ignore them," Daniel murmured as an elderly board member stared a bit too obviously. "They'll get used to it eventually." "I don't care if they do," Elise realized she meant it. After decades of carefully managing perceptions and navigating expectations, she had finally found freedom in choosing her own path regardless of others' opinions. Later that evening, they slipped away to the same cafe where they'd had their first real conversation. Sitting across from Daniel, Elise marveled at how much had changed in a year. "What are you thinking?" he asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "I'm thinking about the first time we came here," she replied. "About how terrified I was that my age would eventually become a barrier between us. And now? Now I understand what you meant that night on my terrace. Age isn't the measure that matters." She reached for his hand. "The past year has taught me that time is precious regardless of how much or little we might have left. It's what we do with it that counts." Daniel smiled, the warm, genuine smile that had first drawn her to him. "So does that mean you'll finally agree to move in with us? Sophie's been planning room redecoration ideas for weeks, convinced you're going to say yes tonight." Elise laughed, surprised and touched. "You two have been plotting behind my back. We prefer to call it strategic family expansion planning," he said with mock seriousness. Sophie made a PowerPoint presentation. "With charts." "Well, I wouldn't want to disappoint the charts," Elise said, feeling her heart swell with love for this man and his remarkable daughter who had shown her that life's most meaningful journeys often begin with the simplest of questions. "Is my age a problem?" she had whispered that night, heavy with doubt and societal expectations. "No," he had answered. "It's a number, not your story. And our story is just beginning." As they walked hand in hand back into the night, Elise understood that his answer had indeed shocked her, not because it was unexpected, but because it had opened the door to a future she had stopped believing was possible. A future measured not in years but in moments of connection, laughter, growth, and love. For those watching this journey unfold, remember that the limitations we most fear are often the ones we place upon ourselves. Life's most profound chapters can begin at any age, with any person who sees us not as we fear to be seen, but as we truly are. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us that it's never too late to rewrite our own endings into beautiful new beginnings.